Hello, my name is Brian Downs, and this is a Republic if you can keep it. Today, which is April 27th, 2025, I would like to take a look in the incompetence column in my ongoing criticisms of the Trump cabal. I'm here to discuss Donald Trump's skill at negotiating when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. Let's review. Ukraine is a sovereign nation and was made so by treaty agreement after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It's been a sovereign nation for decades, and Vladimir Putin, who clearly and unashamedly models himself on Joseph Stalin, one of the great monsters of history, decided to invade Ukraine a few years ago, as you know, of course. Drove the tanks across the border in what he said was a special military operation that would seize control of this vast nation of Ukraine in a matter of days. Clearly, Putin miscalculated. To the surprise of Vladimir Putin and, frankly, myself and the world, the Ukrainians have fought like stainless steel lions who cannot die and have torn the guts out of the Russian war machine. Russia has managed to occupy roughly 15% of the nation of Ukraine and continue to take casualties on a daily basis. This is a catastrophe for Russia on an historic scale. We have to reach back to the Soviet Union's involvement in Afghanistan. Oh, no, because Ukraine has been much more expensive in lives and treasure than Afghanistan was. We literally have to go back to the Second World War to find a disaster to compare. And in the Second World War, of course, the Soviet Union was the victim of the aggressor Hitler. In this case, Vladimir Putin sunk his jaws into a hornet's nest. The Russian war machine has been badly mauled, hundreds of thousands of casualties, an event that has rewritten the history books. The history of warfare is now divided into two sections: before Russia's invasion of Ukraine and after. It has remodeled how we think of the global balance of power and how wars are conducted. Vladimir fucked up. The Ukrainians continue to fight, continue to bloody the Russian invaders. Donald Trump steps in. Donald Trump gets elected to his second term and says, on the campaign trail, I'll end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Utterly absurd to suggest that anyone has the power to do that, except perhaps Vladimir Putin, who could simply withdraw his troops. Of course, that hasn't happened. Donald Trump recently making public statements saying, oh, well, when I claimed that, I meant it as a joke. As an American presidential candidate, I was joking when I said that I could bring a sudden stop to the ongoing humanitarian catastrophe in Ukraine, which is the fault of Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Putin alone. Well, I'm sorry, that's my opinion, that it's Vladimir Putin's fault. Donald Trump seems to be blaming President Zelensky of Ukraine. Donald Trump blames Zelensky for fighting too hard to defend his country. Donald Trump, when recently asked, what concessions are the Russians willing to offer in negotiations, has said, well, it's a pretty big concession that they not take the entire country. Absolute lunacy. The Russians can't take Ukraine. Putin knows it. They have failed to do so for the last several years at catastrophic cost. They don't have the resources, and especially they didn't have the resources when President Joe Biden and we, the Americans, stood against this evil tyranny, this bloody-handed conquest. When we, the arsenal of democracy, did our duty to civilization and shipped them every bullet that wasn't nailed down. But now, Donald Trump is here to tell us that the Ukrainians should surrender. They should give Vladimir Putin huge chunks of the country. They should agree to never join NATO, because why would the Ukrainians ever wish to belong to an organization designed to defend them from Moscow? Donald Trump, the imbecile, the fool, the toady to tyrants, the friend of Vladimir Putin, by the way. Don't forget, of course, how Trump stood on a podium next to Putin and said that he trusted Vladimir Putin more than he trusted American intelligence services. Don't forget that during his first campaign for the presidency, Donald Trump was secretly negotiating the construction of a Trump Tower Moscow with the Russian government while he was telling the American people that he had no business ties with the Russians at all. Don't forget that books have been written. There is a shelf of books about Donald Trump's involvement with the Russian government and Vladimir Putin and every kind of Russian criminal, going back to the days when Trump Tower in Manhattan was packed with Russian gangsters. Donald Trump is here to tell us that Zelensky is at fault. The Ukrainians are at fault. The Americans, we, the Americans, should no longer support Ukraine's struggles to preserve their democracy and their nation. Idiocy, corruption, stupidity on a global scale. Donald Trump, the great negotiator, saying, well, as long as they agree to only keep half of what they've stolen at such catastrophic cost in lives, then I'm going to call that a win. This is a disgrace and a shame. We, the Americans, people of good character, stand against tyranny, stand against the conquerors and the tyrants and the murderers. But not our president. Not our president. He stands with them.